Panitikang Pilipino. Halina't tuklasin ang yaman ng ating panitikan, ang pamana ng ating lahi. Kasama si Binibining Andrea Trinidad, Ginoong Jethro Tenorio at Ginoong Yol Hamendang ng Kagawaran ng Filipino ng Pamantasang Ateneo de Manila. Ito ang Sari-Sari, ang Catholic Mass Media Awards Special Citation Awardee para sa pinakamagaling na palatuntunang pang-edukasyon sa radyo. Dito sa Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM. Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM. Radyo Katipunan, News, Insights, Inspiration. Radyo Katipunan, down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan, the voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng kwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, tulong at tulong. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng kwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, tulong at tulong. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting at tigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan.
Meron? Ano nga ba ang meron? Paano nga bang mabuhay ng tapat sa meron? Don't you wish you can relive your philo classes? The terror teachers? The terrible oral exams? Or the even terrifying but liberating and life-changing aha moments? Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Here's your chance! Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Kasama ang mga pilosopong sina Jovi Miroy at Ron Capinding. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping upward, leaping forward. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping to greater heights, to greater wisdom, to greater magis. Lundag na, Ateneo!
Hello, good afternoon, Sir Jovi. Okay,
Hello.
welcome to our program, ang Lundagin Mo, Beybeh, dito sa Radyo Katipunan. Isa na namang Lunes na makulimlim, basa, at yun, masaya pa rin kahit basa. Ang hirap pumasok pag Lunes at lalong mahirap kapag basa eh. Di ba? Pero kahit na, ito isang...
Online ako pagka Lunes.
Ako talaga, kami laging on-site. Administrador and the teachers sa junior high school. So ayun, maayos naman ang araw ngayon. Marami akong meetings. At ito yung aking pinaka huling gawain sa araw na ito, itong Lundagin Mo, Beybeh. I was looking forward to this. During our meeting, right before this program, ang agenda talaga namin ay mga commemoration of martial law activities dun sa aking sariling meeting. At nananabik tuloy ako na doon ako yung nagpapastol doon. Dito naman ako yung makikinig at matututo. At yun din sana ang attitude sa ang mga makikinig sa atin ngayon. Dahil dito sa ating inihandang programa sa hapong ito, na pinamagatan nating Martial Law Golden. Ba't gano'n title?
Bakit golden?
Di kasi, even before, kasi 50 years, di ba? 50 years,
50 years na
commemoration. 50 years kaya golden. Pero alam din natin na even before the 50 years, may mga humihirit palagi at nagsasabi palagi na may ilan no na nagsasabing martial law or the golden years, ganyan-ganyan. So, pinagsama na lang natin sa pamagat na yun dahil ang ating pag-uusapan ngayon sa isang buong oras ay pagkaraan ng 50 taon, paano natin dapat alalahanin ang batas militar. So, very appropriate ang pamagat natin ay martial law, golden, double meaning yung golden. Ibig sabihin na paano natin tatandaan o alalahanin, gugunitain ang ating martial law.
Buhay ka na ba nung 1972?
Yes. Pinanganak ako September 1973, mga 1 year na noong
okay.
1 year na nung martial law nung ako ay sinilang, 1973. So sir, meron tayong panauhin ngayon. Kasi
pero bago natin siya ipakilala ay meron siyang request na meron siya munang
gusto ipalabas, no? Handa na ba yung kanya gusto ipalabas? Ito yung prelude sa ating pagpapakilala sa kanya. So let's watch it. Ito na po.
Nakakagalit talaga. Walang ibang salita para sa kanya. Nakakagalit talaga siya.
Gusto ko lang tanungin yung ng abuso or kung sino man yung nag-utos na gawin to. Parang nadagdagan po ba kayo? Masaya na po ba kayo sa ginawa nyo? Noong 2 ng Marso, taong 1984, nagpunta kami ng aking nanay at mga kapatid sa bahay ng aming tito upang tulungan siyang asikasuhin ang kanyang asawang may sakit.
Hating gabi nang may mga militar na pumunta sa aming baryo at pinunteriya ang aming tito dahil pinagbibintangan siya noong sumusuporta sa mga miyembro ng NPA.
6 ang pinatay noon, kabilang ang aking tito, tita at nanay. Ayon sa aking mga kapatid, sinubukang tumakas noon ng aming nanay ngunit
naabutan siya ng isang militar saka siya sinaksak. Nagawa para tumakbo ni nanay sa tambakan ng mga niyog, ngunit doon na siya binawian ng buhay.
Kargan niya ako noong lagutan siya ng hininga. 1 taon pa lamang ako noon. 5:00 na ng umaga nang matagpuan ang bangkay ni nanay.
Namuo na ang mga umagos niyang dugo sa aking ilong dahilan ng pagkakaroon ng impeksyon ng aking mata.
2 taon ako nang tanggalin ang naimpeksyon kong mata upang hindi na mahawa pa ang isang mata.
Ngunit tuluyan din akong nawalan ng paningin noong 9 na taong gulang ako. Dahil sa aking kapansanan, napagkaitan akong mamuhay ng normal.
Ako, hindi ko talaga maintindihan kung ano yung root or ano yung pinanggagalingan ng mga ganitong abuse.
Pakiramdam ko galit lang talaga yung mararamdaman ko. Puot, nagiinit, nag-aalap na galit.
Gusto ko lang tanungin yung ng abuso or kung sino man yung nag-utos na gawin to. Parang nadagdagan po ba kayo? Masaya na po ba kayo sa ginawa nyo? Or sa sinapit ng mga biktima?
Para sa isang bata na maka-witness ng ganong klaseng karumal-dumal na krimen, laban lalo sa pamilya ko, na nakita ko talaga na sa sarili kong mata, nakakagalit talaga. Walang ibang salita para sa kanya. Nakakagalit talaga siya.
Although ngayon nasa state of shock ako sa mga ganitong mga salaysay. Ang hirap niyang tanggapin. Pero yung state na yon, wala siya sa kalingkingan ng mga pinagdaanan ng mga nagsulat ng salaysay.
Kahit hindi pa ako buhay nung panahon na yon, parang ang dami ko pang kailangan din matutunan tungkol sa kasaysayan ng bansa natin. Madami pa akong kailangang matutunan tungkol sa mga nangyari sa ibang mga tao. Isang kwento lang yun, pero grabe yung pagtagos niya sa puso ko. Parang pakiramdam ko nananaig din yung galit talaga na minsan sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas ay nangyari to sa atin.
O
Alright.
siya.
That's only one story out of 11,103 stories in our primary collection. I'm Chuck Crisanto, the Executive Director of the Human Rights Violations Victims Memorial Commission. What you just heard or watched is one of the claimants who was provided reparations. And those who were provided reparations, of that 11,103, the total reparations was 50 billion pesos. And that's something that we see as a floor number, minimum number of people hurt by the martial law. Because actually, when the Human Rights Victims Claims Board requested for people to come forward in 2014, 75,749 of our countrymen from north to south, east to west, they came forward. Ang masakit lang, ang marami kulang ng ebidensya, kaya only 14.4% were approved, recognized, to be memorialized in my backdrop called the Freedom Memorial Museum.
So it's our great honor and privilege to have you, Executive Director Chuck Crisanto. So yun ang official title ng binabansagan niya na Martial Law Museum po. Ano? Yun po ba talaga na ang pangalan o yung mahaba po ang kailangang sabihin natin itong Human Rights Victims Violations?
Ang pangalan ng museum natin is the Freedom Memorial Museum.
Ayun,
Freedom Memorial Museum.
The Freedom Memorial Museum. Dahil hindi lang niya nilalaman ang mga nangyaring masama, nilalaman rin niya yung kabayanihan ng ating mga Pilipino na lumaban at ang nagtagumpay noong 1986. Kasama na rin yan sa ating mga kwento, yung mga ating mga pulis at militar na pinangalanan ng mga biktima na nag-abuso sa kanila. Pero sa huling panahon ng diktadura, ito ring pulis at militar ay nagwagi because they sided with the people. And we will also honor them.
That's true. That's true.
Director, ito po bang Freedom Memorial Museum ay exclusively puro mga may kinalaman sa martial law lamang o iba pang bahagi ng kasaysayan natin nandyan din?
In 2013, kung saan pinasa yung Republic Act 10368, nakalagay the period that I will have to cover is only from 1972 to 1986. So yun lang ngayong Marcos martial law era kung tawagin.
Natuwa po ako sa inyong sagot, sir. Kasi ibig sabihin, talagang exclusive dyan. No? Kung it is the place to go. Kung gusto mo talagang madanas, makita ang mga anumang meron tayo na museum tungkol dun sa pinagdaan ng martial law.
Kung magagawa natin to, ito ang ating kontribusyon to the international community of human rights museums, yung mga tinayo sa Germany, sa United States, sa Gwangju, South Korea. Ito naman ang ambag natin. Bakit importante itong ambag ng Pilipinas? Dahil noong 1986, natuto ang maraming bayan, mga sa pamamagitan ng ating non-violent revolution. It was an inspiration that you can see even up to now. The Yellow Vest movement in, let's say, France, the Yellow Umbrella in Hong Kong, the Arab Spring, the Velvet Revolution, many of them would look back at the greatness and the courage of the Filipino people who en masse said, tama na, sobra na, bumaba ka na. And that kind of heroism of our country, I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of. I believe in the Filipino people, a nation that 100 years ago was the first to say, tama na ang kolonyalismo, and they attack, but with arms. Sila Bonifacio, di ba?
Apo.
First to rise against a colonial empire. 100 years later, we reinvent ourselves, and one of the first to rise in the modern age against an authoritarian regime non-violently.
Sir Chuck, just a clarification. Yung commission niyo po ay bahagi ng gobyerno, ng Human Rights Commission, right?
This is a government agency. As a government agency, I always tell this story. Nung nagbabayad ng mga tao, according to the number of points that you suffered or the heirs, may isang ang dumating sa Commission on Human Rights, sa CHR, ang hawak niya 4 na cheque. Each check would contain 1.7 million. Kasi nang binibigay pag you get 10 points in the category.
Wow.
So malaking pera yon sa taong katulad niya na humarap. Pero ang sabi niya, bawat cheque, anak ko. So no matter how much we pay, it will never replace the hurt of losing your daughter, your son, your husband. It will never replace. And so the law said, we will memorialize them in a roll of victims and create the Human Rights Violation Victims Memorial Commission. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Right.
Sir Chuck, tanong na po ako ng medyo, yung pong dito sa Radyo Katipunan po, sa Lundagin Mo, Beybeh particularly, lahat ng sabot-saring tanong namin, may philosophical, may mababaw, may magaan, may mabigat. Sir, ito pong government agency na ito, kumusta po ito? Ngayon na ang government natin ay namumuna ay may kaugnayan dun sa sanhi ng inyong tinatampok. So it's a government agency under a government led by somebody related to the cause of the time. How does that play, sir?
Well, it places me in a unique situation. I'm the smallest government agency among 75 government bodies. I have the smallest budget. There are less than 30 people who have been granted plantilla positions as compared, let's say, Department of Agrarian Reform, baka 15,000 people yan, or DepEd, which has, by the hundreds of civil servants, 30 po lang po kami. And this is the truth that we have to lobby for inside a administration now led by the son of the late dictator. So we live in interesting times.
Interesting times, exactly. So speaking of small, sir, you're up against big ones. Ibig sabihin, it's not just being small relatively, but ang alam ko, malaki ang ini-invest iba pa para daigin yung mga katotohanan ng pinapakita ng inyong Freedom Memorial Museum. Pero marami, may pelikula, may troll farm, may lahat. So from yung small ninyo at yung malaking kilusan na ito to actually beat what the facts and the truths that your museum is trying to convey. So paano po yan? Hindi lang yan basta maliit, kundi maliit na may kalabang malaki. How do you plan to go about it, sir?
I remember when I studied in Ateneo, there's something that we read about fighting a windmill.
Sir, kailan po kayo nag-graduate sa atin? Anong batch po kayo?
79 ako sa high school eh.
Oh.
79.
Sa college? Did you go
And then I went to UP already. I had enough with Jesuit education.
Kami rin po eh, pero we just stayed.
But inside this role of victims, there are some 125 who were actually recognized motu proprio, meaning these people did not apply for reparations but have been recognized by the Human Rights Victims Claims Board as worthy, as having fought and as having suffered during the period. One of them is Father Blanco.
Father Blanco.
He has actually been cited, Father Blanco. There are other religious people who were cited in the claims board, and some of them actually said that, why are we not recognized? We suffered. We were part of the Negros 9. But unfortunately, the law was very specific. We could not recognize the Australian priests or the priests who came from other countries who fought in solidarity with our people, dahil very specific ang law, only for Filipinos. So we will also honor them by telling their story, but not in the manner by which itataga namin yung pangalan nila sa bato, which will form part of the gallery of the museum.
Sir Chuck, please, pardon me sir, di ko masyadong na-note kung yung sinabi nyo kanina na this is our contribution to the international, how do you call that, sir?
International Community of Human Rights Museums.
Ano po ba yan? Ang,
of Human Rights
alam
Museum.
ko sa yung mga Vietnam Memorial, yung ba yan?
If you notice, 100 years ago, people were actually taken from our country and exhibited in St. Louis, an exhibition in St. Louis.
Apa.
Actual Filipinos brought there who were tattooed to display. Or the English always get artifacts and then have their museums and say that, look at this, we found this in many parts of the world. Or animals. So these are museums of natural history. These are museums of antiquity, items from the pyramids. But lately, in the last 20 years, nag-shift na yung attention of museums. That's become more contemporary, and they began focusing on museums about human rights, especially so after World War II, wherein there was a Holocaust, and now they said, this is a part of our history that happened. We tried to eliminate 6 million Jews, and that kind of museum was very hurtful for the German people. But because they sought to investigate, memorialize, they felt that they could only move on if the German youth took a grip of what I always call historical dementia. Kasi dementia is nabaliw na sila. Nabaliw na. Nabaliw na. And for Filipinos, for those of you out there, sometimes you might have a lolo or lola na nakakalimot na. Mamaya kayo nang minumura mismo, minumura yung caregiver, nababaliw na siya because her memory is lost already. She even forgets what she stood for before and what was her past. If a nation falls in dementia, yan yung kabaliwan. Now we have to arrest that, because if you don't arrest it, the nation may fall into disarray, or like what happened in Germany, or not only in Germany, but other countries, they will take on a path that goes to ruin. And that's the important thing about memorialization. We must remember.
Yeah,
Siyempre
so
po.
hindi siya parang hindi siya parang art museum, hindi siya parang historical museum lang. Ano yung inaalala dito? Kunyari, in one or two sentences or one sentence talaga po, ano yung inaalala dito sa
Sa
ating
international
freedom?
sa Human Rights Museums.
Oo.
Ang inaalala natin ay yung mga nilapastangan na karapatang pantao sa panahon ng martial law. In one sentence. Yesterday, we were partners to a tour bus. One NGO said, we'll have a martial tour bus and let's go to the sites around Metro Manila. Their last stop was in my Memorial Museum. So they went to the Film Center, they went to the People Power Monument, and then I invited them. The last stop should be here in the Freedom Memorial Museum because I want yung kabataan yon na nasa bus, ang tour guide nila is a history professor, touch one of my major artifacts. And the one they touched was the ABSECOM van or the aviation security van that housed the body of Ninoy Aquino after he was assassinated in the tarmac. There is only one van in the world.
Yes.
Marcos built 2 bulletproof vans. This one was junked and we recovered it after it being lost for 27 years.
Wow. Oh.
So when they were able to touch it, they felt a connection.
Yeah.
It's like when I went to the Hong Kong Museum and I was so happy because I saw a dinosaur egg. And in the dinosaur egg, there was a hole where you could put your finger and touch the dinosaur egg. Once I touched the dinosaur egg, it's like I was transported millions of years ago because artifacts have that power over video.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there is only one.
Sir,
I
so
agree.
parang nakatayo na yung museum? Pardon my ignorance.
I wish.
2 taon po kasi ako naka-quarantine.
I wish.
My ignorance.
Now, this one went through what I call the most widely participated design competition for a government building. There are 2 major government buildings now being built. The Supreme Court, the Senate building in BGC. They have budgets like 8 billion pesos, big budgets. Those who won the design were foreign firms. So when I launched the design competition here, I said, dapat Pinoy ang manalo. Dapat Pinoy. And I don't care if that Filipino architect is here or abroad. We will make a call. And together with the United Architects of the Philippines, which has 33,000 architects, sabi ko, let's make that call. And do you know what?
Yeah.
Architects who are working siguro in the Middle East as draftsmen lang dahil hindi pwedeng lisensya nila, or in Singapore, in Beijing, they began participating because they wanted to contribute to what would be the Freedom Memorial Museum. The one who designed this is a 27-year-old. 3 of them. When they entered the competition, they didn't know anything about martial law.
Oh.
And so the curator said, this is not pagalingan ng architectural talents. What you have to do is research and then have an architectural expression. And this one they called, at that time, the Fall of Brutal, because the big item here would be the brutalist architecture of Folk Art Center, of PICC, of the Cultural Center, massive concrete structures, overhang, which defined the architectural elements of the dictator. But you can see in their design, a fist cracks them. But
Yeah.
it is not a fist. It also looks like a flower because it is not by violence by which that regime toppled. So it's a fist flower. So that's
Wow,
the architectural expression.
so intelligent, so symbolic and poetic.
In fact, when you go inside this museum, when it is built, so it has not yet been built. When you go inside, you don't go through a door. There are no doors. You go through prison bars.
Oh.
You slip through the prison bars because the architect said during that time, the Philippines was like a prison. You
So
couldn't go out, travel easily. I couldn't go out. I never left the country during that time. I couldn't.
So, sir, what you have now is like rooms. What can we see now?
Nothing except the Absecom van,
Absecom
which
van.
I have to repair. And on that museum lot are buildings of the UP Campus Maintenance Office, Yard, and Workshop. And the deal with the UP president was, I will build them a relocation site, build their buildings so that they can move to their new site so that I can demolish them and make the entire Freedom Memorial site now free to build upon. I'm happy to say that the contractor has now finished all of the buildings where the UP buildings will be relocated.
Wow, congratulations.
100%.
That's good news. That's great
It's
news.
18 hours.
Later
So,
on,
dati UP to, hindi pala to UP.
no, it is UP. It is part of the UP property which we were able to get on a use of frac agreement. Ang ibig po sabihin yan, hindi kami magbabayad kahit piso and we have a term of 50 years over that property.
I see.
Babalik sir, pwede natin pag-usapan yung
Sure.
mismong museum, no? Pero gusto ko rin sanang pag-usapan ay yung gustong itampok na museum. So let's go back to what you mentioned a while ago, yung dementia. Of course, we understand how dementia is sa mga tao, no? At medyo hindi natin inaasahan, minsan nangyayari at wala naman talagang masisisi pag ginawa yan. Pero itong dementia na tinutukoy ninyo, this dementia of a nation, what is the cause of this? This doesn't happen involuntarily. I think there are reasons that led to this dementia. Very strange, no? Dementia of a nation. How can dementia?
That's a disorder, di ba?
Yeah,
Ano ulit ang dementia?
It's a disorder.
Ron, sa Tagalog?
Dementia.
Hindi ko alam. Hindi na
Kasi
naman
yung iba
English sa
sinasabi
dementia,
nila, historical revisionism, di ba?
Ulyanin, nag-uulyanin.
Oh. Ulyanin may be a
very mild,
milder
right?
word, di ba? Kasi baka amnesia yon,
Baka
di ba?
masyadong mabigat kasi yung salitang dementia.
Correct. Kasi it's different from amnesia or loss simply of memory. Dementia means pumapasok ka na sa kabaliwan.
So ibig sabihin, Sir Jovi, talaga dapat pabigat. Hindi pwedeng ibaba lang natin sa amnesia. Ako naman, ibig sabihin, it cannot be as innocent as amnesia, no? Dementia is a disorder talaga. Kailangan.
It's a disorder. So tinatanong nila, kunyari, baka nakakalimutan natin. And I was reminded by my son who's 14 years old. Papa, Hitler came to power in Germany through the ballot. He was voted in a democratic fashion.
Yes.
How are you able to fool an educated middle class of Germans to say that we need a 1,000-year Reich and the solution to our problem is to kill all of the Jews in the world with the final solution? Hindi ba kabaliwan yun? And yet they followed. They followed that march and led us to World War II. And yet they were able to extricate themselves from that dementia later on, after they lost the war. So you see, when a nation falls into a dementia, like Cambodia, nahulog rin sila in the 70s, and that was the Pol Pot regime. And in a small population, they killed 2 million of their people. Massive bloodletting. Dementia yun sa akin eh. They have forgotten the rich culture, their values, the long history and traditions of their people, and they fell into that kind of forgetfulness. And not simply forgetting, they fell into what I think is dementia.
Ano po ba ang mga dahilan dito? Of course, you described what it is, no? But what are the causes of this national dementia. How could it even be possible na malilimutan ng collectively? Yun nga, parang para silang madaling dun sa Germany, no, madaling mauto kahit matatalino. How could this even be possible? Anong nangyari? How could academically intelligent people suddenly just miss
So
it?
people say na, yung mahihina lang ang utak, yung hindi edukado, yung nag-grade school o hindi nagtapos ng high school, yan, prone yan. Pwede mong i-manipulate yung utak nila. Madali lang, pwedeng lokohin. Is that actually true? In the last May 22 elections, the ABC crowd, who actually has a college degree in the NCR, which is the place where there is education is accessible, information is available, voted for somebody who came from that era. Vote for a son of a dictator. Tanga ba sila? I don't think so. Did they make an intelligence choice? I'm a Democrat. I follow what the majority says, no matter how difficult democracy is. You know, it is the system by which we work upon. And I'm not saying I'm always right, but have they not forgotten what that period in our history did to our country? Having a post-war recession so deep, driving hundreds of thousands of our women to prostitution in the Middle East, in Japan, elsewhere, moving 10 million Filipinos out of our country because there's no employment here, malnourishing our people in an agricultural land like Negros. How is this so possible?
Yeah, I remember those things. I was very young, no? May Batang Negros emblem pa, naalala ko eh.
In one generation, nakalimutan.
May
In
mga
two.
jingle pa. At yeah, sir, I listened to you even in the first few minutes that you joined us, and you seem to be very passionate, and I'm very happy na kayo na haharap dito sa malaking proyekto na merong napakaliit na resources ay nandyan, no? And you were talking a while ago about how proud you are of that, the greatness and the courage of the Filipino people which inspired the whole world. May ibang tao parang minamaliit yung ngayon. Has that even diminished now? That greatness and courage that you of that time, yung 1986.
That's
Nabawasan ba yun? Diminished ba?
Marcos diminish the...
Yeah,
nasabi.
Bongbong Marcos man o hindi, or baka mamaya whatever reason, no? Lumiit na ba yun? Kayo kasi parang sariwang-sariwa pa rin eh. You speak about it like it was just yesterday. But somehow, that's not so, that's rare now. Not because there are few, but baka yung iba ayaw rin magsalita. But at the same time, yun nga po, nabawasan na ba yung ningning nung inspirasyong dinulot ng bayan natin sa ibang bayan noong 1986?
3 years ago, I was fortunate enough na napadala ako for a small training sa Switzerland. One Swiss federal officer told me, "Chuck, do you know what your country just did?" Tell me. Your country was able to get ill-gotten wealth of a dictator lodged in our Swiss banks. Oh, that's so unprecedented. Bring it back to your country, create a board to recognize victims of his dictatorial rule, and then have funds to memorialize that period. No other country has done that. You are still a model for countries transitioning from authoritarianism to democracy. Oh, yes. We haven't seen that in Asia, nor in Africa, nor in Europe, of that style.
That's refreshing to hear, sir. Sige, please continue.
However, we flagellate ourselves na, bakit konti lang yung nabigyan, dapat ganito, etc. Consider balitodo nga, balitodo. Nagawa pa rin ng Pilipinas. And
Correct.
that reparations, to give it to the victims, happened, and I always admire their courageousness in doing so. While the law was passed during President Noynoy's time, the reparations, that 10 billion, was distributed during President Duterte's administration. I was fearful that he wouldn't release it. Baka sabihin niya,
Okay.
gagamitin lang yan ng pula, bibili ulit ng baril, lalaban, magiging komunista. You know, he could have said those things, but no, he did not.
So to his credit,
Release it. And even Joe Masison received these reparations. Can you imagine the hope that that inspired? So in this new administration of Bongbong Marcos, just a while ago, just today, his press secretary said the funds to build the museum are intact. As of the moment, they are not opposing its construction. So I'm always optimistic.
Yeah.
Pero may tanong ako which I will present tomorrow sa congressional hearing, because we're up for a hearing in Congress. Okay, may konting pera pa kami ngayon. Next year, baka hindi nyo na i-release yung trust fund namin. Pag hindi nyo i-release yung trust fund namin next year, ang itatayo ko, magiging white elephant. Gusto nyo bang may white elephant? Kasi ako, okay lang sa akin kahit may white elephant. Because that is the memorial.
Yes. Di naman kailangan aktibo. Basta nandun dapat. Memorial nga eh.
Oo.
Sir,
The memorial is a white elephant. Dahil hindi nyo na sinuportahan eh. But there has been no
At
indication yet that they will go against me and my agency in that fashion. So I'm still hopeful.
Hopefully medyo kahit na may kamag-anak niya yung yung diktador, sana merong ng ibang paraan itong si
Dahil
Bongbong Marcos.
ito naman, dapat makita niya na hindi itong museo para ilaglag yung tatay niya. Hindi. The purpose of this museum is to serve as a place where we can have dialogue. Pwede tayo makipagkwentuhan. We can have debate. Ano ba talaga nangyari? We can have conversation. Ano bang gusto natin? Prosperity over liberty? Pwede ba yun? Or liberty before prosperity?
So sir,
nadaanan na natin lahat
can you
yan.
elaborate on that? So hindi naman ito para dagdagan ng pula sa tatay niya. Kung hindi, ano po yung sabi ninyo, ang museo ay ano magiging function ng museo?
Ito ay magiging isang lugar kung saan dadating yung mga kabataan, mga estudyante, at makikita nila ano nangyari sa Pilipinas noong panahon na yon. Iisipin nila, ito ba ang nais natin sa susunod na henerasyon? Na bibigay natin ang ating mga karapatan para sa ekonomiya. Kung hindi dumating yung ekonomiya, dinawalan pa tayo ng karapatan. Baka mali naman yun, di ba? Baka mali naman yun. And they may so decide na, teka, hindi na tayo babalik sa daan na yan. Never again will we go through that road. Never again. And that's what Germany did. The German youth said, we will not fall into the path or the promises of a dictator. We will prize freedom, liberty, and democracy. And on that bedrock, Germany now is one of the most prosperous nations in Europe. So it can be done. Lee Kuan Yew promised his Singaporean people in 1965, give me your liberty, I will give you prosperity. And 4 years ago, I was in an international conference and there was a Singaporean delegate. So sinabi ko sa Singaporean, uy, ang yaman-yaman nyo, Singapore. Kayo ang may pinakamataas na per capita income. Binalik na ba ang liberty nyo? Hindi.
So sir, para hindi siya tungkol kay Marcos, kung hindi tungkol sa mga ideya, mga mas bibigyan ba ng lugar ito mga konsepto, mga pangarap ng martial law or
Palagay ko
Ang
still
unang
about
nating
the
ilalagay doon, yung
victims.
role of victims.
Oh,
Ito yung mga
victims na.
taong nasalanta sa panahon ng batas militar. Pag titingnan mo yung bawat storya niya, gaya ng storya na nakita ng mga manunod natin o naparinggan, makita nila, hindi pala yan NPA. Ordinaryong Pilipino lang pala yan. Kawawa naman sila. They were caught in the crossfire. Collateral damage lang pala sila. Okay. Mamaya maintindihan nila, teka muna, ayon sa datos namin, ang pinakamaraming nasaktan ng martial law, yung namatay, ang isla ng Samar. O bakit marami sa Samar? Ba't mas marami sa Samar kaysa Bohol? Bakit mas marami sa Samar kaysa Romblon? Bakit ang dami namatay doon? Later on, they will understand na Samar was a prime source for illegal logging and mining. And people protested. Those are our lands. That's where our people live. Hindi. Binigay na yan sa mga kumpanya sa mga crony kaya sumunod na lang kayo. Hindi sila sumunod. So nagtakbuhan sila. Sila ang nasalanta. Ang takbuhan nila sa Samar and this one ay ang simbahan. Ang simbahan ang kumupkup sa kanila. That's a lesson. That's a lesson all by itself. And that lesson, when we nag-primary research kami sa simbahan ng Samar, ano ba ang stance ng obispo? Hati rin pala ang simbahan. Huwag na tayong umalma. Anyway, may Santo Niño Shrine tayo sa Tacloban. Pero yung iba, hindi natin pwedeng talikuran yung mga tao dahil wala na silang pupuntahan, kundi ang ating mga simbahan. And that's why the more progressive churches grew from Samar, as well as some other provinces later on that we see in our research. So a lot of lessons.
Maganda dyan, may audio-visual no, Sir Ron? Maganda siguro dyan. Tutulong kami theater. Kailangan may...
Yes. So may black box theater tayong nilalagay dyan. And kung may pera, 180-degree screen. So pagpasok mo, parang green screen, immerse ka na. Kanyari, sinabi nila, ito si Makling Dulag. And then the screen all around will turn into the forest of the Cordillera.
Maganda din siya magkaroon ng sense of fun, di ba? Kasi yung kabataan natin, hindi naman lang din yan. Sir Ron, ano ang bilang mamamayan? Kasi parang mistake yung buong bayan, di ba, Sir Chuck?
Yung fun yan is na-track down ko na yung isang tangke. Matatandaan nyo itong tangke, nandito yan sa EDSA, Corner, Ortigas, na tinutulak ng mga tao. Ako tumulak ako sa tangke. Nahanap ko na saan yung tangke. Pag makuha ko ulit yung tangke, ilalagay ko dyan sa labas. O pwede mag-selfie yung kabataan dun rin. The original tank. The original tank. Fun rin yun. Fun.
Well, for me, Sir Ron, kailangan ng fun element. Ikaw, what do you think?
Palagay ako, di ko yan iniisip. In fact, di ko iniisip yung museum. Pasensya na po. Natutuwa ako sa museum. Ang gusto ko pag-usapan ay yung martial law pa rin. No? Ang pamagat po namin, sir, ay martial law golden. Pinaglalaroan namin yung salitang golden kasi liban sa 50 years commemoration anniversary niya ngayon. Madalas din yan gamitin dati ng loyalist pa tawag doon, apologists na those were the golden years. No? Ano pong masasabi niyo tungkol doon? May comment po ba kayo doon sa golden daw na years na yun? Yun ba yung pagsisinungaling? Yun ba yung pagtatatwa? O yun talaga ay hindi na talaga niya nakita at iba yung nakita niya? So ano naman po dapat gawin sa may mga ganong testimonya o pagsaksi dito sa martial law?
Ang isang punto muna, no? We never called it the 50th anniversary and we don't call it 50th commemoration. Mula sa Memorial Commission, ang tawag namin 50th year marking the declaration.
Okay.
Bakit
so
ganun?
We cannot give it a festive or positive celebration.
Kasi pag anniversary, normally may joyous anniversary, wedding anniversary,
Commemoration
Kahit
naman.
anniversary, okay pa rin dahil you celebrate the life
Ah.
of your father or your lolo.
Commemoration naman, may solemnity ng konti, no? Parang,
May commemoration because you're honoring that day and you're
yes.
commemorating
Tama po.
it.
Tama.
O kami,
Marking.
hindi, we just mark it. We're marking the 50th year.
So
And in
underline
that
ko na,
50th
Sir
year,
Ron, yung nasagot sa tanong natin
Ano?
na hindi pala dapat parang anibersaryo ito.
Yes, exactly. Hindi. Lahat lang, hindi lang alam. Alam din nila na hindi yan masaya, hindi rin yan ganun ka, pero wala lang sila mahawak. Ano to? Birthday? Hindi nila matawag eh. So salamat kay Sir Chuck.
Marking.
Oh,
Ano bang
marking.
marking
Marking is the
Filipino?
way to go. Yeah, that actually liberates us in
Hindi
trying to
pagpurita eh.
label
Marking
that the whole every year. This is the 47th. You don't know how to call it eh. Marking. Year marking dapat.
objective
Wala
lang
dapat
siya.
ganun.
Objective, di ba?
Objective lang siya.
lang siya, okay.
Wala
Ngayon,
siya.
anong sinasabi nilang golden years? Na-track down na namin ano yung golden years. From 1972 to 1977, you would feel that the Philippines is growing because our GNP growth rate was 7% annually.
Whoa.
Oh,
Yeah.
very nice. You could see that in the five-star hotels rising up. You could see that in the reclamation by the sea. You can see that in the Miss Universe beauty pageant. And you can see this in the people wearing red and yellow sweeping our streets and the absence of massive demonstration and a rise of foreign investment. That's the golden age.
72 to
Okay.
77. Yeah.
Why did it stop? Because it was unsustainable, it was debt-ridden, and the country couldn't pay for it because it was graft-ridden as well. So by 78 onwards, it was unraveling. It was debt-funded, and there was so massive corruption. That's why by 1983, after the death of Ninoy, we got the worst, aside from the pandemic, post-war recession in our history. And as I mentioned a while ago, we had people starving in an agricultural island. Kabaliwan.
Yeah, exactly. So kahit hindi nagsisinungaling yung mga nagsasabi na may golden years na parang ang nangyari very myopic, parang kulang yung nakitang larawan, no? Parang yun ang isang ipipintas natin doon.
Ang
So
tawag doon sa English, cherry picking.
Cherry
Piliin
picking
mo
or
lang yung
selective.
gusto mo, yung
Yeah.
kabuuan, wag mo nang, when we go around, when you used to go around prior to pandemic and we'd have our essential truth workshops, I remember in a field of, let's say, 1,000 students, sa open forum, may tatayo, "Sir, tingin ko, mali po kayo." Ah, bakit? Hindi yan ang sinabi ng tatay ko eh. Hindi yan sinabi ng lolo ko eh. Oh, tahimik yung lugar namin eh. So ang tanong ko, saan ba ang probinsya mo? Sa Lawag City. Ah, maganda yan. Maganda yan. Hindi namin sinasabing mali sila. Tunay na may gumaganansya. Lawag City ba naman, di ba? In any administration, there are winners and losers. Pero hindi mo pwedeng sabihin yung nagyari sa Negros,
Samar.
sa Mindanao, sa Samar, hindi pwedeng sabihin na hindi to totoo. Nangyari to sa ating mga kababayan. Ang masakit lang, mas marami sila kesa sa kakaunting may ganansya.
So mas marami sir. Very interesting kasi yung sinasabi yung cherry picking in different terms, no. Yan ang ibinibigay na bansag ngayon sa mga anti-martial law. Parang may binago na yung itinuturing nila na mas marami yun. At even the votes somehow displayed that. Paano po yun? So di ba nagmumukha nag-cherry pick ngayon ay yung mga kontra sa alaala ng martial law? Paano po ba yun? Siguro sa mahuling sandali natin.
Ron, pwede din bang sabihin yun sa laban sa martial law na nag-cherry pick?
Hindi, yun nga yung pinakatanong ko, sir. So interesting na you say cherry picking and I've sensed that yun na yung binabansag ngayon sa mga kontra martial law na they are cherry picking.
Kaya maganda na nagtatag sila ng Memorial Commission. At sa tingin namin sa mga nasalanta ng martial law, hindi lang Metro Manila, nationwide. Nationwide ang mga biktima. And now this is state data. Kumbaga, state-recognized victims that these provinces of 81 provinces, if there are 81, 74 of those provinces had victims of the martial law period. And that's even the low figure. 11,103 is the low figure.
Pero bakit, sir, 31 million?
31 million dahil yan ang maganda naman. Ang edad ko at 6 to 65, 4.5% na lang ako ng population ng Pilipinas. Ang kabataan below 30 years old, significant majority yan. Nung tinanong ni Bam Aquino in 2015, teka muna, ba't ang mga libro natin ng Araling Panlipunan for grade 5, ganito pa rin ang naratibo? Ang sagot, 750,000 na teacher natin sa public education, sa DepEd. Average age 30 to 35 age range. None of them went through martial law. Second, wala silang kumpiyansa magturo. Third, wala silang materyales. So sabi ko, teka muna, teacher kayo eh. Bakit? Buhay na ba kayo nung panahon ni Rizal? Ba't alam niyo paano ituro si Rizal, si Bonifacio? Because there was material. Ito ang nakakalimutan ng tao. Noong mga panahon ng batas militar, media was censored, information was censored, people were fearful of actually what was transpiring. There are many things that happened there that even I, who lived through it, am only discovering now. Like, hindi pa alam ng taong bayan that there was a genocide in Sultan Kudarat. That 800 to 1,500 people, 20 of them asked to dig a grave on a daily basis, shot in the back for 1 month. Hanggang napagod na sila. Bagal naman ito. Naglagay na sila ng 80 na Muslim sa mosque and they fired with automatic gunfire.
At dahil walang news at dahil walang balita, kahit walang may alam niyan, iilan lang. Sabi nyo nga, kahit kayo mismo, ngayon nyo lang nasumpungan niya mga yan. No?
And so, when I found this out, I sent a research team. And several years ago, I went, just before the pandemic, I showed it to a subcluster cabinet, OPAP. Sabi ko, nangyari ito sa mga ating mga kababayan na Muslim. After my presentation, short lang naman presentation ko, one, I think it's a colonel, stood up from DND. Sir, propaganda yan ng kalaban. Okay. The next one stood up. That's fake. So sabi ko, fake? Oh, and this one who said fake came from the Department of Education. One high official. That's fake because that's not found in our books.
pero bakit nga ba, sir? Di ba dapat, pati yung nagsasabing golden years, yung mga pupuri doon, hindi rin naman sila pinanganak noon. Bakit ang nag-prevail ay yung nag-prevail? When I say nag-prevail, yun ang nanalo, no? Yung narrative, pare-pareho lang naman yan na hindi dumaan doon. Bakit yung narrative? So mas maingay ba? Mas magaling ba yung mga tagahabi ng kwento doon sa kabilang panig? Ano po ba yan?
Sa aking kakulangan ng public education sector natin, mula 1987 hanggang ngayon, mula kay Secretary Kisumbing ng DEX pa, ni Carino, tapos nung dumating si Brother Armin ng 2010, ang inatupag K-12 at classroom building. Martial law, knowledge, naiintindihan ko, para sa Pilipinas, yung 3 R's mas importante. Reading, writing, arithmetic. Martial law, 1 paragraph na lang yan. Baka several sentences. Hindi pa natin nakukuha nga yung 3 R's. Yun ang nangyayari. Dahil walang emphasis and during the term where I came in, the DepEd and the CHED did not lift a finger in the teaching of the true, essential truth of martial law. So wala sa curriculum.
Kaya kailangan tala ng museum.
Educational tool. Tama po kayo.
Pero sir, ang dami ngayong... Hindi, yun pa rin ang tanong ko, no? Pero nasasagot nyo naman, sir. Ibig ko lang sabihin, kahit wala ka sa education, bakit ang namayani ngayon ay yung kabila? Pareho rin dapat hindi
Okay.
mamayani eh. Pareho hindi sumulong. Dapat kawalang malay ang mangyayari kung hindi na ituro. Pero bakit ang namayani ay yung maganda raw yun? But
Maganda.
sana pareho.
Baka kailangan ng isa pang museum, which is the post-EDSA museum.
Hindi, maari yun. Hindi, ang sagot dyan, kung buksan mo yung Araling Panlipunan textbook, ito yung 10 ginawa ni Marcos. More roads, more bridges, more electricity. 10. Napatalsik siya dahil 1, 2, 3. Ang discussion, what do you think of the Marcos period? Ano ba naman yun? Leading question na yun eh. But that's found in so many textbooks, in millions of textbooks that run to 2 decades or 3 decades. Kaya natuwa ako nung nag-pandemic. Kasi nung pandemic, walang libro na pinamimigay. Sabi ko, level playing field, labanan tayo sa online. I did not expect na mas malaki yung budget nila sa online.
Yeah, at saka meron pang made in Malacanang, sir. Meron pa lahat. So ang dami-daming channels na para magkwento yung kabilang kwento, no? Yung kabilang naratibo. So meron tayong museum and I'm excited about that pero hindi pa pala siya nasisimulan. So ibig sabihin, of course, ibig ko lang sabihin, napakadehado ng laban samantala, no? So ano po ba? Kumusta po ba?
Tama ka, dehado. Dehado, Pero kahit sa karera, tumaya ka sa dehado, minsan nananalo eh. Pero long shot.
Long shot.
Long shot siya, long shot. But you know, this age of spin, I call this the age of spin.
Yeah.
The spin has been existing since 1972. That's propaganda, big propaganda machinery. In 1986, when we entered the National Media Production Center or NMPC, that was based in now PTV4 or now ABS-CBN. Pagpasok mo doon, kinuwento sa akin, ang daming Betamax. Libo-libong Betamax. Ang daming Betamax Ba't ang daming Betamax dito? Sa mga nakikinig, baka hindi na nila ano ang Betamax.
Video cartridge, no? O sa
video cartridge.
Parang CD. Parang CD. O, hindi na nga CD. Netflix na lahat. Anyway, sige.
Okay. Yung Betamax na yun, ang plano, bawat barangay may Betamax. At iisa lang ang pwede nilang panoorin galing sa Malacanang. So in the past, they would have one narrative that will be shown in all barangays. So the source of news is one portal.
Yes.
Major propaganda movement. Para yun lang isipin mo na si Malakas at si Maganda, yan ang ating mahal na presidente at ang kanyang magandang kabiyak. And even in mythology, in art, in culture, they tried to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. 72 yun. By 2010, nag-iba na. There is no one portal of news or information. Social media now distributed it to your cell phone.
Yeah.
And because it was distributed in people's cell phone, kahit mahirap ka, kahit magsasaka kami, maliit na cellphone ka. Dati, ang guardian natin ng katotohanan, yung mga editor-in-chief ng dyaryo, ng news, sila nagsasabi, hindi pwede yan, fake news yan. Itong ilabas natin totoo. Hindi mo pwede sabihin yan. The flourishing of the age of spin says, micro-targeting ngayon. Itong gusto mong pakinggan, ito yung bibigay ko sa inyo. Ito lang gusto mong isipin, dito tayo iikot.
Siguro
That is the age of spin.
Ang salid ko ng spin ay hobby, no? Panahon ng paghabi ng kwento. Sir, that's just the time we have for this episode. Now, siguro tanungin ko na lang yung pinakatanong namin sa topic, no? So maybe that's also your last message na. So, pagkaraan ng 50 taon, sir, paano dapat alalahanin ng batas militar?
Dapat alalahanin natin yung katotohanan. What is the historical fact? we can debate on the historical perspective, but we should not debate on the historical fact. One point, yung sinabi ko sa inyong genocide. Fact ba yun or fiction? Mukhang fact na maraming pinatay na Muslim. Walang Kristiyanong pinatay. Muslim lang. Okay. Ano yung perspective? Ang sinasabi ng isa, Chuck, gera yun. Gera. Umatake yung military natin, yung Navy. Armado sila, nagpatayan, kaya ang daming namatay. Gera. Collateral damage. That's their perspective. The other perspective is non-combatants lahat. Wala silang baril. Mga bata yun, babae, na pinatay. Now, is that perception or perspective based on fact? Mukhang based on fact. Hindi siya gera. Talagang massacre lang. So, anong importante? Ang importante, ano ba yung katotohanan? Okay, isang katotohanan, bumagsak ba ang ekonomiya ng Pilipinas sa kanyang panunungkulan? Oo. Okay, anong perspektibo dun? Okay, so meron silang perspektibo, meron naman tayong perspektibo batay sa katotohanan. And that's the beauty of what we're doing. This is a place where you can debate, but let's debate on historical facts.
Yeah.
All right. So sa ba nakakuha ng t-shirt nyo?
So, madali lang. Mag-a-apply ka lang sa amin.
Oh!
Kala ko pwedeng bumili na ang ano eh. Pwede.
Pero baka ipadala kita sa Sulu. Dahil ang historical fact is the burning of Sulu is not yet in our textbooks. The massacre that happened in Sulu is not yet in our textbooks. So
Alright.
I remember I have one staff. He was magna cum laude in UP. History. Nice kid. Nerdy kid. I said, you have the brains? You have the heart for history. But do you have the guts to go where I will send you? Where will you send me, sir? Sultan Kudarat, dig up the mass grave.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun. Parang pwede
Kasi-
yan gawin ng ating mga estudyante din.
Yeah, kasi totoo rin.
Kung maging safe.
Ang
Yes,
dahilan
that's
din ng
true.
lahat kahit na marami tayong alam na facts, marami pa rin facts na ipagkait sa atin. Di ba? So, baka kailangan pang hanapin yun para talagang luminaw at lumakas ang larawang ito.
I'm
Pero
very excited
let
for
me
the-
say this. Ito galing kay Father Ed. In the past, I was raised, the truth shall set you free. Alam mo, nagbago na isip ko eh.
Ah.
The truth is like a lamp. Even if you hide it under your bed, the light will show. Okay. But in this age of spin, ito na ang paniniwala ko. The truth must be competitive with the lie.
Yeah.
And if you cannot compete with the lie in its delivery, the truth by itself will not set you free. It can enslave a nation.
All right.
Kaya good luck
So,
sa
nasa ano
ating
din.
sa ating Freedom Memorial
Delivery.
Museum. So, mabuhay ang Freedom Memorial Museum. Sana talagang tumayo siya ng mataas na tindig at matatag na tindig, na taas noong tindig itong Freedom Memorial Museum. At maraming salamat sa panahon niyo, sir,
Thank you,
at sa
sir.
inyong
you.
ginagawa para sa pagtindig nito at sa inyong enerhiya at espiritu.
Oh, mukhang very energetic
Yeah.
actually.
So, yun po. Ito po pinaka-episode namin kasi tuwing Lunes kami dito sa linggo ng the year marking our the martial law of our country na 50 years na. So maraming salamat po
Thank you.
Executive Director Chuck Crisanto at kay Jed na rin at Tanasio. Thank you very much sa
Parehong
assistance mo.
atinista.
Yeah. And I'm so comforted by the fact na si Direct Chuck at nandyan at kasama niya si Jed. Okay? Okay. Yun po. Gusto ulitin, sir. Sana kayo maimbitahan pa namin uli. Lalo na sa inyong pusok at lalim at
I'm very
dami
impressed.
ng karanasan. Salamat po.
All right.
Thank you rin
Yes,
sa
sir.
lahat na nakikinig sa inyo.
Salamat po.
Lundagin mo, Beybeh.
Lundagin mo, Beybeh.
Meron? Ano nga ba ang meron? Paano nga bang mabuhay ng tapat sa meron? Don't you wish you can relive your philo classes? The terror teachers? The terrible oral exams? Or the even terrifying but liberating and life-changing aha moments? Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Here's your chance! Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Kasama ang mga pilosopong sina Jovi Miroy at Ron Capinding. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping upward, leaping forward. Lundagin mo, Beybeh! Leaping to greater heights, to greater wisdom, to greater magis. Lundag na, Ateneo! Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo